While mapping the rocks as we found them in the present, we had to hold in our minds the geographies of the past. Intellectually, we all understood that landscapes are impermanent, that the modern topography of Svalbard is a legacy of the Ice Age, that long before Pangaea existed, the contorted rocks we were studying had been flat layers of sediment on an ancient seafloor. But as flesh and blood mortals, laboring up slopes toward the formidable peaks, we found it difficult to imagine that they had not been there forever. Too often, as we struggled to understand the mountain's interior architecture, they seemed not only unyielding, but also hermetic, closed to interpretation. Glacial ice, equally mute, conspired with them to conceal their secrets. Events that had shaped the landscape more recently were easier to read from the topography. The broad strand plain, which slopes gently from the base of the mountains to the sea, was clearly once a beach, beveled off by waves. The old shoreline is now covered by a layer of springy moss and peat, but as we walked across it on our daily commute into the mountains, we could feel the old wave-rounded cobbles rolling beneath our feet. The present elevation of this surface, a few tens of feet above sea level, reflects the rebound of the land since the late Pleistocene, when all of Svalbard was under a thick blanket of ice. As the ice-aged glaciers melted, sea level rose dramatically, but in the last 10,000 years, the duration of human history, the land has bounced back even more, lifting the former beach beyond reach of the raging surf. Perhaps Svalbard was not as still as it seemed. One day, high in the mountains, staggering under packs full of rock samples, we realized that a valley glacier might provide a shortcut back to base camp. The ice looked passable from where we stood, blue, not white, a good sign that there would be no crevasses hidden by last year's snows. There was a chance that we'd have to turn back if we encountered a deep meltwater canyon in the ice or between the glacier and the valley wall on the opposite side, but in our exhausted state, we decided to take the gamble. We buckled spiky crampons onto our boots, looped the straps of ice axes around our wrists, and started crunching across the glacier's rough surface. At about the halfway point, we hopped over a small trench in the ice, and were about to continue onward when we heard a gurgling noise that rose in pitch like a drink being poured into a tall glass. Then came the sound of rushing water, and we turned to see that the channel we had just jumped across was now a small torrent. 30 seconds later, it was empty again. We exchanged puzzled looks, and then heard the gurgling once more from upstream, followed by another surge of water in the rivulet. We watched in fascination as this cycle repeated itself over and over, the water in the channel pulsing every minute or so like the icy lifeblood of the glacier. Then we understood. Higher up on the ice, the little river ran through a series of pools, each a bit deeper than the main channel. When the topmost pool overflowed, another freshet would be sent downstream, and each pool would fill and empty in succession until the one just above us was overtopped and water spilled into the channel we had crossed. We all laughed. It felt as if the glacier had told a joke, and that somehow, improbably, we humans had grasped the humor. Understanding the glacier's logic created an odd feeling of intimacy with it. Although the ice still obscured critical rock outcrops and posed dangers to careless geologists, it no longer seemed coldly incommunicative. We had a sense not only of its physical character, but also of something like its personality. The glacier did grant us safe passage back to camp that day. In the weeks that followed, I began paying more attention to the habits of glaciers, and discovered other instances of their wit and creativity. In a narrow rock canyon, huge boulders were wedged tight high above the valley floor as if levitating, placed there by ice like whimsical pieces in a colossal sculpture garden. Crossing an inland ice field one day, I encountered a dozen narrow streams of cold air, not wind, but separate density-driven currents gliding silently down slope. Traversing them was like passing through a series of invisible doorways into and out of rooms with different thermostat settings. Such elaborate installations seemed to call for appreciative audiences. Glaciers also modeled for us in miniature how strata become wrinkled in mountain building. Glacial ice built up over millennia when summer warmth does not melt winter snow.